Hi everyone, and welcome to Midland Mencap's second podcast today. And as an ambassador for Midland Mencap, I would like to welcome Councillor John Councillor John Cotton, Cabinet Member for Social Inclusion, Community Safety and Equalities at Birmingham City Council.
Thanks for inviting me along. Really pleased to be here.
No problem. First of all, John, I would like to, if you wouldn't mind, to explain your role at the council.
Well, I think I've probably got the most interesting job in the entire cabinet of the council. So I've got this sort of three parts to what I do. So firstly, I'm responsible for social inclusion. So that's really taking a look at the inequalities that still affect too many neighbourhoods in Birmingham, and really challenging the other parts of the council and partner organisations as well over what they're going to do to try and change that map. So, whether I'm challenging the stuff we're doing in economic development to create more jobs, whether I'm challenging people around health inequalities, whether we're trying to increase connections between neighbourhoods through transport links, and then also challenging other actors, so businesses in the city, what are they doing around recruiting locally, what's the health service doing to do its bit. So that's kind of the first part of what I do.
Okay.
Then the second bit is community safety. So that's the work the council does with the police and other partners to, as it says on the tin, ensure that we've got safe neighbourhoods, safe streets, safe communities. And then the third part is around equalities, which kind of links back to the first bit of the role. But in that role, I'm also very much in the place of looking at what the council's doing in terms of its own workforce and in terms of how it works with communities to ensure that we really are treating people equally, we're championing the equality and diversity of the city, because we've got an amazingly diverse city. We need to ensure that's reflected in our workforce and in every area of the city's life.
Okay, thank you. Community safety is a hot topic at the moment, with what's going on. And unfortunately, disability hate crime has risen by 35% in England. So, and many disability people like myself, what we're asking is, what is the council going to do to help people like us feel safe in our areas and in and around Birmingham?
Yeah, and I think this sort of growth of hate crime and intolerance is one of the really disfiguring things that's happened.
And it's not just... and also it's hate crime via online and other things. So it's mainly, fears of wanting to feel safe when you go out or... just in general, really.
And I think the online point's an interesting one, because we're talking just before we started about how great some of the online social media stuff is now in terms of the things you can do and the platform it gives you. Unfortunately, it also gives a platform to some really unsavoury elements, and who find it then very easy to spread messages of hate and division and undermine people.
And it can make people feel really judged and isolated, and I know that feeling. You just feel vulnerable, don't you? Why me? Why have I deserved this? When it's not really fair. It's just someone who hasn't got anything better to do, and they just want to put hate on someone.
Absolutely, and I've experienced a little bit of this as a politician, but I've been doing this for 20 plus years now. When I started, if people really wanted to do something like that, to go to the effort of writing you a letter, buying a stamp, sticking it in a postbox and sending it to you.
And putting loads of swear words on it.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas now it's quite easy to fire off an email or kick off on Twitter or, do something on Facebook.
And rant, basically.
Yeah. And some of that's legitimate. If you're a politician, you expect a political leader, you expect to be held accountable. But I do think there has been a coarsening of the debate over the time that I've been involved that's been quite unhelpful. So instead of a proper and robust exchange of views, you get into some very unpleasant places where it just becomes out and out abuse. And certainly I think that then plays out into some of the hate crime stuff that we've seen that's aimed at various sections of our community. It's one of the things that we're prioritising through our community safety partnership, which is the body that brings together the council, the police and those other key players. The council leads that partnership. And we're basically trying to hardwire this into all the work that we're doing out in communities and trying to foster that sort of tolerance and calling out the bad behaviour where it happens.
Yeah, and I don't know whether you'd agree with me. I feel like social media, it's like to ban someone, it doesn't necessarily stop it because they'll find a way around it. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's hard because I've been banned. I'll just find another way.
Yeah. And there is this thing where you try and call this out and stop it, and then they just pop up elsewhere.
Yeah.
There's these little Twitter accounts with 1 or 2 followers who've suddenly have set up 6 hours ago, and they start pouring out the bile again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge for our age, I think.
Yeah.
Wider than the council as well.
But I'm sure in one day we'll find a way and hopefully make people feel a lot more safe.
Yeah, and also it's down to, I think we always need to reflect that the majority of people are good and decent people, and actually we need to try and create spaces where they can feel confident in standing up and calling things out.
Because there's no, people who are younger than me, like the council, they've got rid of most youth clubs where people felt safe that they could go after school, and there's not many I don't think there's many of them left, so that doesn't give them a safe haven to go after school because there's no youth club available.
Yeah, and this
because they've cut them.
Yeah, this has been one of the big problems that we've had with the impact of cuts.
Yep, which moves us nicely on to my next question. We've all heard of austerity. How do you feel this has affected the council's choices in ensuring our most vulnerable citizens continue to receive services that support them to be active citizens in the city?
This has been the biggest challenge that certainly I've seen in my time on the council. We just need to take a step back for a moment and just reflect on what austerity's done. Yeah. So because of funding cuts from central government, something in the region of 750 million quid has been taken out of the council's budget over the last 10 years. So by the time we get to the end of that 10-year period where austerity started, so sort of 2021, 750 million has come out. So that's just about 2/3 of the controllable budget of the council.
Ouch.
Yeah, ouch, and then some. The thing I always say to people is, just to put it in context, imagine your household budget gets cut by 2/3. How would you find it to manage? What is that? You're then into that thing about what bills do I need to pay and in what order? What are the little things that I like in life that have to go first?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that, but on a bigger scale for the council.
Yeah, and I think that's why some people mentally struggle. I know that myself. Like 1 minute I can be paying rent, have my PIP and ESA, and then next minute I'm being reviewed again, and it's just like it's a nightmare because I'm just like I need a roof over my head, and I don't really. I guess I am scared of being on without a roof over my head because there are vulnerable people out there that do get scared every time they get a letter through the door saying, "Oh, your PIP's gone, oh, your ESA's gone." It's a never-ending struggle. It's really hard.
Absolutely, and this is why it's then meant that we've had to be really careful about the choices that we've made. And I think as the cabinet of the council, the sort of ruling politicians, we've taken the view that actually protecting the interests of the most vulnerable has to come first.
Yep.
That means some tough choices elsewhere. So it does mean that we ended up charging for green waste collection because there was other stuff that we thought was more important in the big scheme of things in terms of protecting vulnerable people. You then have an additional problem with local government in particular because the money largely comes down from central government. So only about 10% is raised locally through council tax. So the strings that are attached to what comes from central government is considerable. And of course, if they're then chopping that money, it makes it even more difficult. And then we've also got what are called statutory duties. So there are things that we have to do. The law says you must, offer adult social care packages to those who are in critical need. You must deliver, various other activities. And then we have stuff that's discretionary. It's good to do, but we don't legally have to do it.
Right.
Now, the problem is that if you're trying to manage the budget, obviously you've got to meet your statutory duties, because otherwise you end up in a load of other trouble. But a lot of the stuff that's in exactly the space that's about protecting vulnerable people, that's about preventing things getting out of hand in the first place. So whether that's preventing homelessness, whether that's preventing people getting into a condition where they end up in hospital or in residential care, those are the things that are immediately under the squeeze. And there's been a really difficult balancing act, I think, over the last few years to try and keep spend in the discretionary prevention space. And I think we've managed to do some of that, but bluntly, there's stuff that we used to do that we don't do now that is leading to people falling into crisis. And just to finish on that point, this is why austerity is an utterly mad policy, because if you take away the prevention stuff, more people fall into crisis, and then more people need the statutory services that you've got less and less money to pay for. So it's a completely false economy, and it's really not been understood, I think, by governments and others that the crisis they created in cities like Birmingham because of this.
And like you were saying, some people who have had surgery and have gone home, they're suddenly stranded, and it's like, what? My personal experience, I had a colostomy bag, which was quite scary. It's been reversed, but when you're sent home, you don't know what to do, because you need care all the time. You don't know how to manage it, and that's what's been going wrong, because you just assume that you'll know how to manage it. I never experienced it. I wouldn't know how to deal with it, and that's what the problem is. In that, when it happens to someone vulnerable like that, is that how do they cope? They don't know how to cope with a situation like that.
Exactly, and of course, I think your point's a good one, and it also illustrates that it's not just the council that's been suffering because of this. So at the same time, we've got that money coming out. You've got a similar amount of money that's a hole in the NHS budget in Birmingham. So again, they're having to cut back on various other things that they used to do. In the community safety world, the police, West Midlands Police is the smallest it's been in 45 years. We lost 2,000 officers because of cuts. And that's having a very obvious effect. You've got all those changes that have happened to welfare benefits. You're talking about PIP earlier on, things like universal credit. And so it's just constantly putting people under more and more pressure. And we're kind of trying to stretch the band-aid over as much of this as we can. It's
but there's only so much. What is it? Oh, there's only so far that you can stretch a piece of string, isn't there, before it snaps.
Exactly.
So a lot of people with learning disabilities would like to get a job or gain work experience. How do you see the council and its partners working with us to get and keep good jobs?
And I think we've got to do a lot more around this, because we're not securing those opportunities for people anywhere near the level that we should be. And I think we can learn from some good practice that's happened elsewhere. I know it's a national issue, but I think there are certainly things that we can ramp up in Birmingham that we've not done effectively thus far.
If you don't mind me saying, that does sort of affect me, because I'm 27, nearly 28, and the reason why I haven't been applying for jobs is that I have felt neglected. As soon as I've gone to an employer and said, "Oh, I've got dyslexia," they take one look at me and go, "We don't want to hire you." That's why I don't want to work, because that's why I'm doing voluntary work, because it's just they've just taken one look at you before they've even seen your CV or got to know you as a person. They just go, "No."
Yeah,
and you're left on a rubbish heap.
And that's just a pretty damning indictment of a whole set of social attitudes that we need to change. So I think from the point of view of the council, we've got to lead by example here. So we're rewriting our workforce strategy at the moment. What I'm pushing as the Equalities Cabinet member is to see a real commitment written in there to how we're helping people with learning disabilities get into creating those opportunities. And then I think we've also got to look at, notwithstanding the fact we've seen massive spending cuts, we still commission and procure a lot of things in this city. We spend money with businesses, we spend money with other organisations and providers, and I think we've got to build on what we've already been doing, that when we do that kind of purchasing, we're attaching other expectations to it. So one of the first things we did, by way of example, was we said we wanted our suppliers and our commission organisations to pay the living wage. Well, I want to attach some other stuff to this as well now. So what are you doing about ensuring that you've got a properly diverse workforce? What are you doing about recruiting from excluded groups? What are you doing to empower people to be able to come into those jobs and opportunities? So I want to see that more explicitly written into what we're doing. I think also, as I said, part of the role is about challenge. We need to be laying down a marker with some of the other businesses in the city. One of the big challenges we've got in Birmingham is that we've actually got quite a vibrant economy in one way. You know, you go into the city centre and you see all the cranes are up in the sky. You know, we've got the big employers coming and investing in here. But the challenge is to make that relevant to the people who live in my own patch in Tile Cross, who live out here in Wheelie, to groups who've been excluded from that. So what are they doing to create those pathways? There's a challenge that we need to lay down to them. If you want to be part of Birmingham and create prosperity in Birmingham, well, what are you doing to ensure that that's shared more equally? So again, that's something else that we need to be laying down. We've got to change the game here. We've got to change the culture.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's like you say, we're changing the culture. Unfortunately, some people with disabilities, like people without, I felt like they're up there, and people with are sort of down there, but they need to be there so that they can be seen as exactly the same. Because in my opinion, yes, okay, it's a person with a disability, but they're still an everyday person. They just need a little bit of help to get there, but they're still there. Yeah. And that's what needs to change.
And I think there's probably challenges that need to be laid down nationally around recruitment practices, full stop.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's if it's discrimination around disability, if it's discrimination around postcode, discrimination around ethnicity, you know, these things, the kind of, and if it's not that overt, there's almost an unconscious bias, I think, on the part of some employers as well when they're looking at CVs and application forms coming in. And again, changing that is really important. The council can't do that on its own, but I think we can encourage good practice and also get our own house properly in order around some of this stuff as well.
Yep. So, can you tell us about the council's priorities? Oh dear, I missed one. You're a strong advocate of community coercion and inclusion. What is your message to citizens with learning disabilities about how their voice can influence the council, statutory partners and community organisations, ensuring our voice is heard in Birmingham?
Well, I think you're absolutely key to this, because if we got any hope of managing that massive reduction in budgets in a sensible way, we've got to have ongoing dialogue with all of the communities of Birmingham. And, you know, we've done some very good stuff in that space, but there's much more that we need to do. And frankly, in some areas we haven't got it right. No. And we've got to strengthen that approach, because we need to hear the voices of everybody. And part of the problem is with sort of budget consultations, sometimes there's that old saying about squeaky wheels get the grease. And, you know, if you get a very loud and well-organised lobby, they can dominate that discussion. I think we've got to ensure that whilst we need to listen to those voices, we're capturing the views of other groups, other interests in the city as well. So creating a bit of a more equal platform is a useful way of doing that. So, and that's where sometimes the online stuff really helps. So in addition to what we used to do, and we'd have a sort of public meeting in various parts of the city around the budget, which did tend to get dominated by loud voices, as public meetings do. We've been doing stuff online as well, so there's been some big detailed online consultation. We've done webcasts and things like that where people can send the questions in, and, you know, it's a little less intimidating perhaps at a public meeting setting, so you even it up a bit, and podcasts as well, things like that. All of that stuff is really helpful. But then there's some other, I'd really like us to draw on the examples of some good practice that we've had within the council, particularly in the world of the Supporting People programme, where we set up a citizens panel, which is made up of service users, and basically they became a really powerful voice and an independent body. I mean, they used to hold me to account when I was in previous cabinet roles in a really, absolutely robust way. And we also then were able to use the members of that citizens panel when we were commissioning services. They had an input into the commissioning process. So they helped shape the spec, and then they were challenging the would-be providers of services over, well, what are you going to do about these disability issues? What are you going to do about creating new opportunities? And did it in a really systematic way. And I think we've got to find ways of adopting that approach in other bits of the council. So sometimes there's a bit, you get a bit good practice in one area. How do you share it elsewhere? And we should be doing, I think much more in that space.
Yeah, you need to get an even balance, don't you?
Yeah.
To sort of not so much put eggs all in one basket, but to sort of spread them out so that each one has its own equal person getting it from down, and just so that everywhere is like, okay, so we've done that, let's move on to that.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth Games. I've done it again. Can you tell us about the council's priorities going forward that are aimed at creating a more inclusive city for us all to live in?
Well, I think it links back to what we've been talking about throughout here. So we've got a set of corporate priorities. So, we're saying that we want this to be an entrepreneurial city where people can, achieve their utmost in terms of work. Bluntly, the best social policy, the best health policy, the best inclusion policy is a job, a decent, well-paid job, and the ability to thrive economically. And that's got to be one of the areas, as we've talked about, where we're expanding those opportunities for people. We want it to be a city that's got aspiration, so no one's left behind here. And frankly, there are issues with aspiration in parts of this city where people just feel, for a whole host of reasons, they're not engaged in that whole. They don't see those ladders, those pathways where they can move on in life. We want it to be a city where you can grow old well in, which is becoming increasingly pertinent to me as the years go on. And also, just a place that's great to live in. It all comes back to that piece of, we've got a fantastic place with so much opportunity in it, but how do we share that out fairly? And how do we ensure that everybody gets a chance to play the part in it?
And how do we tell people how good our city is and what benefits are for people? Yeah. And help them understand that there are loads of things for them. We just need to get the voice out to say, look, this is how good we are and we can help you, and just get the word out there, really.
But part of that has to be about challenging poverty, which is another big priority for me in all of this. We've got a third of kids in this city.
Big ribbon that needs a lot of work.
Yeah, but we've got a third of kids in this city growing up below the poverty line. We've got levels of worklessness in certain wards and neighbourhoods that are, the 50% mark. We've got a health inequality gap that's appalling. So if you think of the cross-city railway line, you can add or subtract 10 years to your life expectancy depending on where you get off and go home on that line. And that is... I can't think of anything more sort of shocking and striking, actually. There's a real inequality gap here, and that's the thing we've really got to get our focus on.
Yes, we do. So, the Commonwealth Games is something very exciting to look forward to. How will the council seek to ensure the benefits of the Games taking place in Birmingham benefit all of the city's citizens?
I think it is an amazing opportunity. It's going to lever in significant extra money. Not least, it's a way that we, from government, so they're picking up 75% of the costs here, and then we're picking up a quarter of this locally, not just from the council but with partners. It's going to advance some really serious regeneration in the Perry-Bar area of the city, and then there's the wider benefits of having all those visitors coming into Birmingham, all of that attention here. it brings in other business activity, it creates jobs, it's a multiplier of sort of benefits that come from it. So that's the immediate stuff. But I think there's a very valid challenge to this, which was summed up by a constituent in my patch out on the glebe when it was announced that we were going to bid to host the games, and their challenge essentially was, well, what difference is it going to make here? Great that Birmingham's going for this stuff, but what's the tangible difference? Because we've been hit by all of the sort of austerity stuff over the last few years on the glebe, as other neighbourhoods have. How are you going to use this to change what's happening here? So I think we've got to, again, come back to that challenge word again, but we've got to really lay down a challenge to the organisation that's leading on the games, and to all those people who benefit from that investment. What's the legacy going to be? So health inequalities, for instance.
And it's like you said earlier, something about no one should feel left out. That's exactly what we're saying with these games, in that no matter whether you're fit or, no one's left out. So it's there for everyone to be a part of it, to bring different people together. And
I want to see a legacy of this in communities that's not just the immediate zone where the games happen and the kind of the vibrancy of the city centre. So I want to see activities that, 5 years on from the games, you go out into neighbourhoods well away from where all this happened. You go, well, that's what the games did. Whether it's a kind of sports project, whether it's some investment in a community facility, whether it's sort of changed mindset over what's possible. We've got to have that as part of the legacy of the games. And also, it's not just the games. We've got major investment in the form of High Speed 2 coming in. Again, that has to be something that changes lives in outer ring of Birmingham, not just it's a line that sort of comes by Birmingham and lands in the city centre, and there's no tangible benefit in terms of jobs or investment in the communities it passes through.
So, how do you think? How do you think Brexit might affect the lives of people with a disability? And also, if you don't mind me asking, do you think it will have an effect on people's mental health?
Well, at the time of recording, who knows how the Brexit saga is going to end? I don't think the government have got the first clue about how it's going to end either. I do wonder when the history books come to be written, and historians will look back on this period and go, "What on earth? How on earth did they get to that point?" I think that the potential damage that Brexit will cause to certainly this city's economy and the national economy will be considerable. We're cutting ourselves out of effectively cutting ourselves out of a major market and key set of international relations. I think the wider economic damage of that could be considerable, and it will hit every person, every community potentially. And we've kind of unleashed something that we know not the full consequences of. So that's the economic side of it. I then worry about the social implications of this, not least because economic instability causes social problems. But also, and it goes back to what we were talking about a little earlier, I think the lid was lifted on some stuff by the referendum and afterwards that has not helped moderate, decent, sensible debate in this country. And again, the rise of sort of hate crime based incidents, a general lack of tolerance, and is a very bad thing. And it does come back to the point, you look at the result of the referendum, and I respect the fact that what the outcome of that referendum was. The ward I represented at the time was, I think, 80% for leave. We need to understand why people got to the point of making that decision. But it was, at the end of the day, a 48-52 result. And we've sort of got ourselves into a position of not understanding that that's telling you the country's pretty split down the middle. And what should have been a healing and bringing together process has instead become an incredibly divisive political battle. And nobody's going to benefit from that.
No, and also, unfortunately, I might have said in one of my previous podcasts is, what are people going to do for food, because we get food into supermarkets? Are people is it going to be a sad occasion where we're going to need a lot more food banks, because that's what could happen, in that supermarkets won't be able to get food in, so that everyone will need to rely on food bank, and that is quite a scary proposition for people, because people need to eat, they want to have a roof over their head, and if they can't afford to eat, that's going to be another crisis on their hands, because we need to stay well.
Absolutely. We're was it 14, 15 days out or whatever it is from this happening, and we're still not clear about food supplies. We're still not clear about how essential medicine gets in. As I say, the historians of the future will look at this, and I mean, even if it doesn't get to that point, they'll still look at this and go, really? This is where the sixth biggest economy in the world really got itself?
Yeah. I think that's, and sort of like, it's like the generation before me, that they had it, God knows what they went through, and now I'm getting older, and I'm dreading getting older, to be honest, the way this is going. But we'll try and find a way as best we can.
Watch this space.
Watch this space. Birmingham is a very congested city. How will the council's plans to deal with that issue, and ensure alternatives to car users as safe, accessible and affordable for people with disabilities?
Well, we've really got to change the game on transport in the city. And we have now put together quite a comprehensive strategy called Birmingham Connected, which is about essentially how we move off that reliance on the car and invest properly in public transport and effective, clean, efficient public transport connections. And again, that's so important to the economy of the city as well. People being able to get to jobs and opportunities. And we haven't got the most effective system at the moment. Part of this is we had bus deregulation all those years ago. So the old corporation buses that were run by the council back in the day, that all went. That then meant that you were working with a system that's largely, it's a private enterprise system, and it's largely financially led rather than community need led in many respects. So we need to change the game on that. It's also about how we use some of the bigger investments that are coming through. So how we extend the metro, for instance. It is extraordinary that I first joined the City Council in 1999. And I think they opened the first line of the metro up to Wolverhampton the following year. And it's then taken them 20 years to take it forward. And it's now, slowly inching its way up towards 5 ways. And we've got plans that to extend the metro out to East Birmingham through my own area, which would be transformative. If you can get an efficient, fast line out that connects East Birmingham to the airport and the NEC, where there are job opportunities, and back into the city centre. And also you can then revitalise things along the line, can't you? Because things grow up around these kind of main connections. So we've got to do far more of that. We really need, I think, a change of policy at government level that enables us to get more control over things like bus services. At the moment, we are sort of, having to plead, negotiate, beg that the bus companies operate in certain ways. I know that, down here in South Birmingham, there's been a whole set of issues with how bus services were changed. In my own neck of the woods, we had a really appalling bit of consultation, frankly, that just ended with a whole set of changes to bus services in Tarcross that nobody knew about. So we've been trying to put that right subsequent to it. But we just need effective transport connections. And so what we talk about in Birmingham Connected is about an equitable transport system. So, one that is genuinely affordable, because this is a really big barrier for people. Yeah, bus fares are not... They're not cheap. And if you're trying
they are definitely not. They are a disgrace, I'm sorry, but they are.
Absolutely. And again, something we have very little control over as a sort of a public sector at the moment.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to influence those kind of things more effectively than we can. Because, we haven't got people moving around this city they're not going to be able to access opportunities. And the other big thing, of course, is air pollution kills 900 people a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is the big whack. So I keep on saying to people, right, can you imagine if I stood up and said 900 people a year in this city are dying because they're eating adulterated food, or 900 people in this city are dying every year because the water's dodgy?
Yeah,
yeah. And it's kind of like the big challenge of our age, because that's exactly what the Victorians who sat in the City Council chamber in the 1850s and 60s were having to deal with. And that's why we had public health acts, that's why they municipalised the water and the gas and everything else. Yeah. And we've got the same challenge now. And unless we change the way in which people move around this city, so it is greener and less polluting, we're going to end up with that. And
which is not good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just, I think, the starkest thing I know about public health in this city. 900 people die because of air pollution related causes.
Oh dear.
So
watch this space then. So I do have some quick fire questions for you.
Okay. On the buzzer.
Favourite band?
The Jam.
Ooh.
Always The Jam.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Always come back to The Jam. There's loads of music I love in many. I'm quite eclectic in that way, but The Jam's always deep in my soul.
Okay. Marmite, yes or no?
Oh, it's definitely a yes, isn't it?
Yes, come on.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah. I mean, who are these Marmite haters? What's wrong with them?
I know, exactly. My definitely 11th is Marmite. Favourite movie?
I see, I'm very lowbrow on this thing, so nothing will ever beat Star Wars for me.
Oh, and just as we were getting on so well, it is so boring.
I went to see. I was 5 years old, 1977. No, bit 4. Yeah, my dad took me to see Star Wars, and it's been my favourite film ever since. There we are.
Boring. I mean, there are movies that are like first, then there's sequels, and then you think, yay, end the movie, and then.
Actually, to be fair, I think probably The Empire Strikes Back is the better film, but I've just got a lot of warm feelings about Star Wars. Anyway. I feel we're not going to agree on this one.
No, sadly not. Favourite superhero?
It's Batman.
Okay. Any particular reason?
I think it's largely related to, again, being a little kid. And back in those days, I can remember just being sat in my granddad's house, and it was the old Adam West 1960s Batman series, which always had the coolest Batmobile of all the Batmobiles.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I think some of the rebooted versions that have been a bit darker and truer to the original have been really good as well. He's brooding and moody, and he's, I'm a Batman.
I'm not going to say mine because you won't agree with me.
Go on.
Deadpool. I just think he's he doesn't really care, and I just like that part. Oh. Just the fact that he doesn't really care really if people like him or not. And I don't think we're going to agree on this next one either, unfortunately. Right. Political heroes.
Right. Well, I have 2. It's a very close choice, but on account of the fact it's the man's 103rd birthday today,
okay,
I'm going to say Harold Wilson.
Okay.
Who I think was one of the great underrated reforming prime ministers of his time, who led the country through a very, very difficult period, managed to win 4 elections, which is always a good thing in a political leader to be able to win, and also just did amazing stuff around making this country more liberal and more tolerant. If you think around sort of the Race Relations Acts, decriminalising homosexuality, the stuff that was then done around the Open University and trying to create platforms for people to be able to move on and do all that stuff around access and opportunity. And I think Wilson had a bad stick for a very long time. Also, he managed to keep his party together over Europe and get through a referendum and out the other side without splitting the country in 2.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm here for the rehab of Harold Wilson.
And your second one?
My other one's Clement Attlee, who was the Prime Minister of the 1945 Labour government.
Okay.
And again, it's if you think about what happened in 1945, the country's absolutely shattered after 6 years of war. We're financially in a really difficult position because of that. And yet he managed to lead a Labour government for 6 years that again transformed the country. Set up the welfare state, set up the NHS, managed to start turning around the economy and making the country a much fairer place. And to think that they did that in the context of a country that was shattered and broke, and they said, actually, these are the important things that need to be done. We cannot, just go back to the old ways of doing things. We cannot go back to the days of mass unemployment. We cannot go back to the days when you had to pay to see the doctor. And I think that's pretty inspirational as well.
Yep. Whereas you want to be able to get an appointment with your doctor all the time, but that can't be guaranteed. So before we finish, one last question.
Yep.
Birmingham's population is the youngest in Europe. What are your hopes and aspirations for our city and its young people of the future?
This is Birmingham's really great strength, that we are such a young city. So we don't have the kind of demographic problems that other areas do. And that youth of our population is such an asset if we invest in it properly. So if we're ensuring that young people are getting the skills that they need, are getting connected into the opportunities that are there, we can really make this place fly. And that's what I want to see happen. It's difficult because of all the external pressures that we have, but we really need to keep our eye on that prize. So, that generation that's coming up now can really achieve their utmost, whether that's in political leadership, business leadership, and just creating a place that we all want to be. Birmingham's a great place. I mean, I was born here many years ago. I've lived here all my life. It's got such potential still, and we can do that with that young population. So there's everything to play for.
And hopefully a chance for us to find a job that we like. And well, it's been an absolute pleasure. We may not have agreed on something towards the end, but can't agree on everything, can we? So yes, I've been Tom Kirby, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.